Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Commander Clash podcast, where we talk all things Commander. And today we are talking about the top cards from the latest set, Aetherdrift. Joined with me is Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive. How are you doing, Seth?
I am doing good. This set has some wild Commander cards in it. Oh my goodness.
Tomer, budget Commander, you ready to go fast?
I'm ready to go loot, Richard. I'm ready to go loot. Do you see the loot shrine? You see it over there? It's going to get a lot of new cards. I'm very excited.
The way we're going, Tomer, you're going to have to convert that whole wall to a loot shrine.
All the shells will be loot soon enough. I'm very excited.
Krim, the Asian Avenger, how's it going?
It goes well. I'm excited to talk about some of the sweet new Aetherdrift cards.
And I am the Codfather, Richard. And I'm excited to go fast, although not too fast, because it's once a turn you can increase your speed. Before we get into today's show is brought to you by Ultimate Guard, premium protection for your trading cards. All the gaming accessories we use on this channel are brought to you by Ultimate Guard, so check out ultimateguard.com. And also Card Conduit, the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. You can skip all the typing, time, and work associated with buy listing. You can use a curated service where you send in as many cards as you want with buy list value of $1 or more and pay just a 5% service fee. You can use their sorted service where you list and sort your cards and pay only 2%. You get a detailed report and fast payment once your order is processed. Get 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/mtggoldfish. So thank you to our sponsors. It's time for the Ultimate Guard comment of the week. Now, last week, we talked about reasons to play more Mana Rocks and why you should play more Mana Rocks. Top comment from NerdHerder545. I suspect that Phil and his deck building ethos of value go burr, make them have an answer, is the most representative of Commander players at large.
Probably true.
Yeah.
I think that's what a lot of people, how a lot of people play Commander. Gotta get that value.
Gotta get that value. And then you provide the threat, and maybe no one has the answer, and you just win.
Be the problem. That's the motto.
All right, let's go into Aetherdrift. We have compiled a list of cards. Our list was very large. We have cut it down to some of the most exciting cards, or cards we're most excited to talk about. I'm going to kick things off with Muragonda Raceway, featuring the new mechanic from the set, Start Your Engines. Now, unfortunately, the card I'm looking at doesn't even have reminder text on it, so I'm going to go off memory. So, if Start Your Engines is a new mechanic, it's kind of like the city's blessing, okay? So, if you haven't started your engines yet, you start at 1. Okay, on your turn, if an opponent loses life, you get to increase your speed. The maximum speed is 4, and there are a lot of cards that at max speed, something happens to you. So Muragonda Raceway is start your engines,
And
tap.
You can only increase
do
once
it
each
once.
turn. I think we
Once
missed
each
that
turn,
part.
yes.
Once each turn, yeah.
Once each turn. So tap to add colorless. It's a colorless land. It enters untapped. Max speed, tap to add 2 colorless. It becomes a free Ancient Tomb at max speed. Now, I know I put this on my list because when I wrote this down, I was excited to play this. But since then, I have concluded this card sucks.
Wow.
So I'm curious
Really?
what your opinion is, right? So the optimal curve for max speed, right, is the turn you play it, you start at speed 1 and you smack someone, right? So that's 1 turn, you're at speed 2. 1 more turn to hit them, you're at speed 3, and then 1 more turn, right? So it takes 3 turns to fully turn online. You need to actually be able to deal damage to people to do this. So in the best case, you play this on turn 1 and turn 2, and then you have a Temple of the False God, essentially, by the time it turns on. But the worst case is you top deck this like turn 5, and this thing like never turns on, right? Or even if you play this on turn 1, do you have like little spirited companions and stuff to peck away at your opponents? Like you may not have like the means to increase your speed. So if you are like an actual speed deck where you're built around this, fine. But I feel most decks can't actually turn this on in a timely manner, and you might as well just play like literally any other utility land. So that is my conclusion after thinking about it. I'm curious what you guys think. Is this just like free Ancient Tomb? Like turn on by turn 6, it's still great, right? Is this what it is?
Do you ever feel bad for drawing an Ancient Tomb? Like I mean,
No,
I
because it-
feel like
Well, but do you
draw it
ever
on
feel
turn
bad when you
6
draw
you draw it on
waste?
turn 6. You draw this on turn 6, it like does nothing, right? Like that's the well, I mean it's a colorless land. But you can't turn it on anymore, right?
I mean, wait, what? Like, I think you're acting like there's a certain point in the game where I think just it's impossible to turn this on. But I feel like gradually over a game of Commander on your turn, you could totally, assuming what kind of deck you are, you could totally turn this on. This is still good at all points of the game.
Wait,
I feel like this and Amonkhet Raceway are absolutely nuts.
I don't know if I exactly agree with that. Like, I think if you top deck this, okay, so if you're a max speed deck and you're playing other Start Your Engines cards, then this card's great. Like, no doubt about it, you're going to turn it on, it's going to be good. But if you're not playing any other Start Your Engines cards, I still think the card's really good, but I do think there's going to be times when it's pretty bad. Like, I think in just a generic deck that doesn't start your engine in other ways, if you draw this turn 6, turn 7, the game's probably going to end before you get an Ancient Tomb. So you got a waste out of it. The thing is, a waste isn't that bad. It's not like we're talking, Temple of the False God here, where you have a land that like literally does absolutely
so
zero nothing until you get to turn 7, and then it's like, oh, I got an Ancient Tomb. This is like, at least it's making mana. It's being a waste in the early game, and then eventually it becomes really good. So I think, assuming you can afford to play a colorless land, and you have enough things to damage your opponent. If you're playing some control deck or some combo deck where you're just not damaging your opponents at all, then it's not going to turn on. But assuming you meet that criteria, I think it's worth playing, even though it's colorless.
I don't think it's hard at all, even in a control
Tomer.
deck at this point.
I think it's good in particular decks, but like I feel like the amount of slot, there's so many good utility lands, right, that are non-basics, that it starts clogging up, especially if it's a colorless land. It doesn't tap for colored mana. I like that it enters untapped at the very least. I was considering putting it in my Teysa Opulent Oligarch deck, which is all about draining your opponents consistently every single turn. Phil played it recently on a Commander Clash episode, and that one, it's almost all basics because it's a budget deck, so we'll see how expensive this card is. But I can see this one being something that you just like play on the early turns, and then every single turn you're pinging your opponents. That's the whole point of the deck, and then eventually it becomes a Temple of the False God. I think that's fine, but it's just like there's a lot of competing non-basics at this point. So I think you have to be in the right deck. The deck that can consistently start your engines and everything is going to be the ones that you run this.
All right, I need to know, Seth. I do, because we jokingly or non-jokingly talk about on this podcast about cutting things like shocks, cutting things like Odawaru, right? Cutting MDFCs because we're so strapped for land slots.
Odawaru.
Where do you put? Are you cutting MDFCs to stick this in? Are you cutting down your 2 last basics to shove this in?
We're down to
Like,
1 basic. We're down to 1.
Where does this rank in the hierarchy of things you're gonna stick in? Like, are you cutting bounce lands for this? Like Chevelle lands? What are we doing?
So we have discussed the possibility of banning Ancient Tomb on Commander Clash. Is this like the budget replacement? Like, let's say we go through and next season we end up banning Ancient Tomb. Do you just play this in that slot as like a reasonable? No, you're not going to do it. You want the early game Ancient Tomb power to like power something out on turn 1 or turn 2. I mean, I guess that makes sense. That is the tough question.
Play 3 of these. Are you kidding me?
Wait, just like
if
every
Ancient Tomb, like I'm gonna play Ancient Tomb this, even maybe Temple, but like assuming Ancient Tomb isn't banned, but if it is banned, then it's gonna be this. And
You guys are so like up about like Dousing Dagger and how impossible it is to hit once and get like a tri-land for free. You guys gotta like do so much work to get the speed going. Like, what if you just play Tron land and Urza's was it Cave? What's the one that's like all land types at once?
Oh,
sure. Planar Nexus is
Planar
Like, why don't you just do that? Like, we could do that if we want, just like on the off chance, like spring our mana base for crazy value, but. It's rough. I'm curious. This is a card I'm curious about. So I want to see us play this, and I want to see like how hard it is to actually turn on. Like maybe you don't work at all, and like 99% of the time it's just a free soul land. Then of course it's ridiculous, right? But maybe most of the time, it's just a a waste, and then you're better served putting in like literally any utility land. Like we're talking about like cutting lock plains and stuff, or Bajuka bogs. Like just put one of those in and call it a
Bog
day, right?
is not a card. But I think the funniest thing is that you've left out probably the best max speed land.
Wait, what's the best?
I think
max
this one
speed
is
land?
good.
I want to hear it.
I think it's actually Amonkhet Raceway.
What does that
That one
do?
is
What does it do?
once you get max speed, you just tap, target creature gains haste. That's it. Like, and in a deck that is, well, you're trying to increase max speed, you're trying to make people lose life. You're gonna, whatever deck is doing that and wants this haste, I think you'll get to max speed real quick. Whenever you find it.
I do like
I
haste on lands, especially when they're mana
Yeah.
efficient. It's a really good effect.
It is a good
And
fact.
it's not like a tap a red, then tap
Yeah.
this, right? It's just tap this, give haste.
It's just slow.
I think
I do not think
I mean, we
think
have
y'all
so
are
many of these effects
really
already. It's fine.
undervaluing how like okay, yes, it is max speed, but max speed is not as slow as you think it is. It's not as hard as you think it is to get either.
Wait. So are you talking about like a max speed deck crim where you're playing like
No, I'm
10, 15 max speed cards? Or you're talking like I'm playing a
I'm gonna
normal
put
deck and I
this-
have these like 2 lands as my only max speed cards?
Yes,
I think
these are my only
Ooh,
max
I
speed.
think he means you're a red aggro deck, and by virtue of that, you're naturally like a max speed deck,
Or any
right? Because
creature
you're
deck.
aggressive, you're playing creatures, you're playing hasters, so you're just kind of naturally max speed, even though these are the only 2 cards in your deck
But-
that care about max speed.
But what are the
Max
odds that
speed?
you have one of those to make all of that damage matter? Like, if you don't draw this early, all that damage isn't increasing your speed, right? If you're not a max speed deck. So that would be my concern. Like, if you have 2 cards in your 100-card deck, I don't think the math is super good that you're going to have one, like, on turn 1 or turn 2. And if you draw them on turn 6 or turn 7, sure, by turn 9 or 10, you can turn it on consistently, but the game might be over by that point. Like that's my concern, is like if you don't have a lot of start your engines cards, I'm not sure how consistently you're going to be able to get to max speed.
I think though the difference here is what you guys value in a card and what I value, and I think that this is a card where it requires no effort. I mean, like, as in, like, to me, it's no effort because these are things that I wanted to do anyways. If you're going to reward me for taking actions I was already going to do, that's free value. So the fact of the matter is that max speed just wants you to lose life. Great. I'm trying to do that anyways. If you're going to just throw some cherries on top, perfect.
This means a lot coming from Krim because he believes in like 5 pips on turn 5.
I know.
So the
If Chris
fact that
playing a
he's
colorless
playing
land.
a colorless
Yeah.
land means a lot. That's a big like seal of approval. So
I mean,
I'm excited
I-
to see this.
I really want to see it in play too. Like I said, I'm with Krim on any deck that can reliably start your engine every single turn, go up a gear or whatever, max speed. Perforos, like any ping, anything that's like evasive,
Mhm.
smack you a little bit, anything like that. I think like if you're in a 1-color, 2-color deck, then these are really, really good payoffs for running a utility land. So I'm down.
I'm glad you mentioned the colors, because I think that's what it comes down to. Going back to Richard's question about where do you fit it, I feel like monocolor and 2-color decks, you still have enough room, right, to like play a reasonable amount of basics and add another utility land. 3, 4, 5 color, that's where I think it becomes a little tougher.
And also my reasonable versus your reasonable, Seth, are very different. Like for reasonable for me, it's like I'm not gonna
I
like
have the laxest definition of reasonable, and I'm still sketched out by this card. So we'll see. We'll see.
I mean,
this is an
Oh.
interesting card. That's not what I
Another
talk
thing to
about
think
it.
about is that Amonkhet Raceway is going to give you haste in colors that couldn't have it,
Yes,
like that don't
Yeah.
normally have it. That's big.
that I think that's a huge deal because all of the haste, like Arena of Glory, we actually play everywhere.
Right.
It's a red land, right? And then
Hmm.
the handwear
The
or whatever, and the
Hall of
Flame
the
King,
Bandit.
whatever, Hall of the Bandit, like all of them, like they're locked to a color. So
Hmm.
giving green or something haste could be terrifying.
Yeah.
So just a little math on this, because I pulled up the hypergeometric calculator. If you're playing 2 max speed cards in your 100-card deck, 13%, 13.5 that you'll have one in your opening hand. If you double that up to your first like 14 cards drawn, so that'd be like turn 7-ish if you're not drawing extra cards, you're at 25%. So I feel like
Ah.
2 is just not a very big number for starting your engines early in the game. I think if you get up to like 6, 8, somewhere like if you can find more start your engines cards to sneak in there, then I think the plan becomes a lot more appealing. But I think the math is a little sketchy,
that's
honestly.
wrong.
Might be more
You're like, this
playable.
card is so good, but there's only a 1 in 99 shot I draw it in my opening hand or whatever. Therefore, it's trash. That doesn't make any sense, right? Like, when you have this card, it works, and if you don't have it, obviously it doesn't work, right? So,
but it's
The-
like
it's
think of it
math
like
to be doing.
suspend 4 or something. Like, yeah, it's great that you have a really powerful effect, but if you have to wait 4 turns, you really need it early in the game, or else like it's not going to be as valuable, right? Because you got to wait those turns. So that's kind of how I think of it.
I guess
at
that's
least.
true. I guess that's true. All right, we spent
I
way
mean,
too much time
we got-
on
yeah.
the raceways. We got to go on to
this-
Oh,
sets.
God.
Easy mode. The most broken card in the set. The most broken card Wizard has printed in a long time, I think. I think this card's absurd. And that card is our new Lotus, Radiant Lotus. So 6-mana artifact comes into play untapped. You tap it, sack 1 or more artifacts, including itself. Choose a color. Target player adds 3 mana of the chosen color for each artifact sack this way. So compared to Black Lotus, it's 6 mana. That's obviously a downside, but this turns every single one of your artifacts into a Black Lotus. You can play this, and it blows my mind they printed this the way that they did, honestly. If you think of something like Nyx Lotus, the like devotion mana rock that's like Nykthos, they made that come into play on tap because it can come down and theoretically make a ton of mana in one turn. To me, this looks like a mana geyser for artifact decks or whatever, where if you're a deck that's going to have a bunch of artifacts, you play this and go from 6 mana up to 30 mana, and we've seen time and time again that if you do that with something like Mana Geyser, you're probably going to win the game, right? Like if you just have that huge burst of mana. So it is a card that doesn't go in every deck. You need to have artifacts to make it worth it. It's not like a Black Lotus in the sense Black Lotus, you can just play on its own and sack it to get a bunch of mana. You really need other artifacts. But if you look on EDH Rec, the most popular theme in Commander is artifacts. The second is treasures. And then like fourth is tokens, which often includes maps and bloods. So this fits in a lot of really popular themes. So I think if I'm any artifact deck, this card is incredibly busted. Brea or Urza or Mishra, Urtet. And then you have all the food decks, you have the clue decks, the treasure decks. So I think there's a ton of homes for this card. And if I'm playing any one of those archetypes, discounting the fact this is probably going to be like a $50 card or something, and like currently like 60 some bucks pre-sale. So discounting budget issues, I feel like it's basically an auto include in any of those decks. And it's probably going to be one of your strongest finishers.
I think its best home is the token makers. Like you said, food, clues, treasures, I guess. Those are going to be, I think, the best homes for it, just because they poop out, like Lotus, for example, poops out so many clue tokens. Prosper poops out so many treasure tokens. Of like a Sam deck or a Rocco deck poop out so many food tokens, and you don't really have a lot of use for them in those decks. You utilize them for other things. Like you don't care about sacrificing them, is what I mean. Like you tap them for mana, or you sacrifice them for mana for this thing. Like I was thinking, I have an artifact that got Tetsun, and I pay mana for those artifacts. So like I don't necessarily want to be mass sacrificing to the Radiant Lotus, but if you like follow it up with like a mass reanimation spell right afterwards, then it could be like super sick. Like you tap this and you scrap Mastery and you return all the artifacts that you just sacrificed back to the battlefield. That could be huge. So yeah, I think this card is going to be a game ender. Like usually if somebody plays Radiant Lotus, they're going to tap it and probably win the game, just like a geyser essentially.
So you're saying artifact decks are now definitely not allowed to like live to turn 6.
No,
Got
they're
it.
fine.
I mean, hey, I think this card is very good. It's going in my Iron Man deck because Iron Man already is potting away all the artifacts, and you're loaded up with Iker Wellspring effects. This card is nuts.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good.
You can tutor it up, right? Or is it?
Yeah,
you
can tutor it up.
Or non-tutor?
It's a solid B or C. So Heart Clan Ironworks exists, right? Like when you're doing like nonsense artifact stuff, like you have one of these cards, so you get another one, right? Or Mana Geyser exists. You can do all of this without literally setting up anything. So this is another card that slots into it. It's a lot slower than Clark Clan Ironworks, but it generates colored mana. The important thing is you can use it for value, like in Lotus, for example. Like you can use it whereas you wouldn't put like a Clark Clan Ironworks because you're not really like comboing off in the same way. But I don't know. It's just a finisher in an artifact deck, and I'm sure you'll play it in the right circumstances, but nothing too like
Okay,
Crazy.
so
Like if the artifact
guess
deck
so.
has 50 artifacts on the battlefield, you're probably dead regardless of Radiant Lotus or not. You know what I mean? Like once they've
Yeah.
gotten to that state, you're dead. Right?
But
So
think-
whatever
think
it is
of-
they use to spew it out, sure, right?
Think of Phil decks, though. Think of Phil.
Yeah.
Phil ends up with a lot of decks that have 20 artifacts on the battlefield, and he's not killing anyone. They're just like a bunch of
Yeah.
blue tokens that he's drawn with Caretaker's talent. If he can transform those into like 20, 30 mana, 60 mana, he's probably going to kill us with a bunch of like huge Phil spells. So I feel like it's going to be
Probably
way
not.
stronger than that.
He's gonna waste
maybe.
it on
He'll
cards,
just
draw
not draw
spells,
more
and
He's
cards.
already
turtle,
done his
and
whole
then-
thing and he still can't kill us because he keeps drawing cards. So the Radiant Lotus
Yeah.
will just draw more cards. I don't know.
And also,
I'm excited for it.
I feel like every time we've seen KCI, Care Clan Ironworks on Clash, it just does something busted and wins the game. So if the comparison is,
Yes.
oh, it's just another
Yeah.
KCI, I feel like
It's
that's a
KCI,
legendary
but two
game
more,
winning
right?
card.
It gives you more redundancy to KCI.
It's
right?
harder
But
to
it gives
combo
you
off, but it gives
so
you
much
more
mana.
mana. Yeah.
Yeah.
And colored mana.
Yeah, this is a fair KCI, like as in non-combo KCI. Even though I'm sure you could combo with this very easily too. Like anything that's like a mana sink that you pay 3 mana untap it or something like that. You could do silly things with it, but it's like a just a geyser for
Yeah.
artifacts.
How
It's really
much
good.
is KCI an expensive card?
Yes.
How much is KCI?
Yeah, it's like 30
It
bucks,
is?
I think,
Okay.
right?
Is it still?
Because I'm like, people are this card is super expensive.
I mean,
we're
it's
doing this during pre-sales, but it's like a $60 card right now, which seems
Oh, it's
crazy
worth-
because like it just goes in like very specific decks, right? Like so it's kind of
But it
interesting.
goes in every one of
Very
those
good.
decks.
Well, it goes in artifact decks that are not dedicated combo decks, like Lotus or food decks or something like that, right? Tomer, hit us with a card.
Okay, this is the one that I'm by far the most hyped for from the set, and it's not loot, surprisingly. Wait, where is it? Is it on the list?
It is.
That's under the artifacts, I think.
Ah, yes.
It's-
It was yellow, so I was scared of it. Monuments to Endurance. This is a 3 mana colorless artifact that says, whenever you discard a card, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. You either draw a card, create a treasure token, or each opponent loses 3 life. So if you discard 3 cards on a single turn, you can draw a card, create a treasure token, each opponent loses 3 life. This card is super exciting because I have multiple decks that care about discarding, and they're all red decks. Like I feel like I'm like the red mage that I have multiple red decks that utilize discarding. So like Inti, for example, is all about loot effects and rummaging effects, like Thrill of Possibility, Unexpected Windfall, everything like that. Discard Matters is like the bread and butter of my Inti deck. This one is just like card draw, extra mana, and also a win condition all rolled into one on a 3-drop. That seems ridiculous to me. I also have a second deck that is entirely, it's not a discard deck, but it happens to run like Unexpected Windfall, Seize the Spoils, and all of that. It's my Melik Is It Spellslinger deck. It's loaded with those cards too. They're especially good when you start copying them and stuff, which my Melik deck can do. But then again, like might as well jam this in because it's another way of just, if I'm running all these Unexpected Windfalls, basically every single one that exists, if I'm doing all this discarding all the time, I might as well be drawing cards and making mana and then also killing my opponents at the same time. For 3 mana, it seems like such a great deal. Like it's so mana efficient.
I mean, I play Phyrexian Arena in a lot of
Yeah.
decks. If you make a mana every turn with this, it's like a 3 mana rock. There's a lot of ways this card can be good, right? If you're any deck that can consistently discard cards, I feel like even just 1 card a turn is going to make it worth playing this. And then you get the upside that if you're like Mary Reed and Annie Bonnie deck, or like a Anj Falconwrath, like a Rona deck, something where your commander's really good at like untapping itself, drawing a bunch of cards, you can be triggering this during your opponent's turn too, and really getting an absurd amount of value. So yeah, this card's really cool. I like this card a lot. Like you got to be in the right deck that's able to discard stuff, but assuming you can do that, I think this card's basically an auto include in those decks.
Judge
I've
question.
seen a lot of like self-discard this set through the sharks that have come out. So like this
Yeah.
is one of the I like this new archetype of like rewarding yourself for discarding, right? Self-discard seems powerful, especially with something like demand answers, or not demand answers, but like, you know, bitter triumph and things like that. So I'm excited to see how this plays. I think this card is very good as well.
if you discard 3 cards with the same thing, right? So like draw 3, discard 3. Do all 3 of these modes trigger, or do they need to be like individual
Yes.
instances?
So it doesn't say 1 or more cards. So yeah, if you cast a Faithless Looting, you'll get 2 modes
got
out of
3
it. Or
triggers.
Bargaining
So
3, you get
Faithless
3 modes.
Looting,
Yeah.
Wheel of Fortune, things like
Yep.
that.
Yeah, Faithless Looting, you draw a card, make a treasure token, and you loot 2. Like, that seems insane.
And
I mean,
also,
it's not bad. And the good thing is, because you have all these discard effects, if this card is whatever bad, you can actually just loot it away because your deck
Yeah.
already is full of looting, right? So it's actually self-correcting.
if you can blink it too, it resets the modes, which is kind of relevant for cycling decks. There's like Escape Protocol, which is like an enchantment that when you cycle something, you can blink an artifact or creature. So if you're playing some sort of cycling deck and you can like cycle and reset this, then you can keep using its modes again and again and again, which maybe lets you combo off. So kind of niche, but worth keeping in mind for those decks.
It has the infinite like drain right on it. So yeah, with Escape Protocol, I think you could go infinite if you have
it makes the treasure
cards,
too. So the treasure
so
can
it pays
pay
for
the
itself.
cost of Escape Protocol. Yeah. So as long as you have enough cyclers or like a new perspective to cycle for free or something, you just win the game probably.
Yeah.
Artifacts winning the game. Shocking.
Weird.
Who would have thought?
Grim,
So
hit
new.
us-
It's fine.
Hit us with the card.
Well, I feel like there's no way I'm not starting this off with one of my favorite cards from the set. I'm sure you all will like very quickly disagree, but I am so excited to play with Riverchurn Monument, which is like, to no one's surprise, it's 1 in a blue. It's an artifact. It's got the thick frog god on the art. 1 and tap it. Any number of target players, each mill 2 cards. That's right, any number, including the whole table and yourself if you need it. And then it has exhaust for 2 and blue, which is any number of target players, each mill cards equal to the number of cards in their graveyard. Well, this obviously is going to combo off with, it can combo off with a lot of things, between Madden Cacophony, you know, whatever, Terizian Mindbreaker, you got Fleet Swallower, all the big spells, right? Traumatize. Now you have more ways to like essentially OTK somebody, like 1 turn mill somebody out of nowhere. And I think the more of these that mill players get, the more people will be afraid, because it's weird. Again, everybody makes fun of me for playing mill, but they always kill me because like, Krim, stop all my cards. So now the thing here is you don't have to worry about like getting punched by the whole table if you just simply start eliminating them all in one go. And I think this is going to be a powerful mill player piece. Very specific archetype. Yes, I know. I'm not going to tell you to play this in every deck, but I am going to tell you that mill players and anybody that wants to self-mill as well, I think this card is very good.
Yeah, if you're one of the dozens of Commander mill players out there, this card's a banger.
This card,
There's a lot of
dozens
mill
of us.
players out there. I don't know about
There's-
South Mill. That seems a little sus.
Would you play it
but
in
6
Modrotha
mana-
or Sidisi to like? Would you
No.
play it in South Mill?
Ugh.
yeah, why wouldn't you? You can mill yourself and the table.
It costs
if you
1
want.
mana to do it. Ugh.
It
But
costs
to
you
be able to
mana.
consistently
You're probably not
Only
building other
2.
people if you're playing Sidisi. You probably don't
It's
want to like take half your
consistent.
deck and chuck it in the graveyard either. Like I
I
feel
think
this
this
is a
is-
dedicated mill deck, and
This is a
6
1-2
mana
punch with Traumatize. Yeah.
mill the whole thing. Like it kills people.
Yeah,
It kills people.
it does.
Like the biggest risk of dumping half of someone's graveyard or library into the graveyard is they just mass reanimate it, right? But this allows you to finish the job and like kill them immediately. So I actually really like this in a mill deck, but I don't believe in the self mill. The self mill just seems a little too sus for that one.
I'm with the Richard on that one. Yeah.
Are you getting the gold bordered? Or sorry, yellow bordered version?
No.
Krim?
I'm surprised that Seth likes the yellow borders. I think the yellow borders hurt my eyes.
Isn't
Like
that a
white border
plus,
is
though?
cool. Huh?
Isn't that a
What?
plus if it hurts your eyes?
Yeah, that's
No.
it's a
It's fine
strategy.
if it doesn't
Krim.
hurt
If your opponents
my
can't
eyes.
look at your cards, how are they going to know how to play against
This is
you?
a
They're not going to read
2025
the
version
Cosmo. They're
of-
just going to be like, oh, whatever, mill 2, fine, it's fine, it's fine.
This is a
White
2025
border is
version
okay
of
to look
white
at.
border.
No. White borders are good. I like them. This hurts my eyes. The whole first place finish borders. God, I'm selling all the whatever I get. I'm just giving it away. I do not want these.
whatever. I'll take the tactical advantage of tilting my opponents with these. I'm not paying extra for it, obviously, but if it's open,
Yo,
then
milling
I'll
in
keep it.
yellow border, that's maximum meme.
I want all my basics to be yellow, and I want to play like a 5-color deck, and people would be like, "Wait, you're tapping your mana wrong." I'm like, "Nope, you can't see them, so it all works in my favor." Who needs Chromatic Lantern anymore when they're all yellow?
All right.
Excited.
I'm gonna nominate Loot the Pathfinder. 2 green, blue, red. So 5 in Teamer. 2/4 legendary creature beast noble. Double strike, vigilance, haste. 3 exhaust abilities. Green tap, add 3 mana of any one color. Blue tap, draw 3 cards. Red tap, deal 3 damage to any target. Now, Loot as a commander, I think, probably sucks. But Loot in the 99 with like Agatha's Soul Cauldron, Blink effects, any of these ways to reset Loot, I think make it amazing. Like 1 mana tap, draw 3, like that's a power 9 card, my friends, right? And it has haste, so you can on 6 mana use it and use any of these abilities. So if you go 6 mana, tap add 3 mana, it only actually costs you 3, and you could have smacked someone for 4 commander damage or 4 loot damage in the process. I don't know why they made this, but Agatha Soul Cauldron, artifacts go burr. You probably win if you assemble this. Any of those, like all creatures have abilities of something in the graveyard, any blink effect, clone effect, stuff like that. This goes crazy.
You also
card's
can play this
insane.
with Elvish Refueler if Loot's your commander, because Refueler allows you to activate exhausted abilities as if they aren't exhausted. So,
God.
I think this card is good as your commander as well. Is the main thing. Is what
It's
I'm
probably
trying to
good
say.
as your commander too.
I also think it's insane as your commander. Although, I don't know about the elf plan. You can also achieve the same thing just by, like, ghostly flicker, any sort of
Blinking.
like, flicker effect, which I think is probably how people are going to build this. I actually kind of hate this card, not because it's loot, but because I feel like it's just one of those, like, really powerful, generic, good stuff commanders. Like, it doesn't really push you in a it's like a Kenrith type card to me, where it's just like, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to be super busted and even incentivize you to blink me a bunch of times to have these huge, very long turns. So I feel like it's actually almost annoyingly powerful as your commander.
Probably closer to Garth One-Eyed, right? Like
That's
you play
another
Garth One-Eye, you just
comparison.
blink it. I think this card is nuts as your commander. It's
I-
again more of what Loot does already, generic good stuff, but more.
I guess that is kind of Loot's thing, yeah.
Yeah, but okay, I'll be the weirdo. I hope to be wrong because I am Loot's #1 fan after all. I think this card kind of sucks. Like,
Really?
I feel like okay, it has a lot of good stuffy stuff, but like, why am I running this over any other busted teamer commander? Right? Like, there's so many strong teamer commanders. This one is like a 5-drop. That does nothing when it enters. Like, you pay 5 mana, you put this on the battlefield, then you have to pay more mana to activate it. Then you need to run other cards to blink it and all this nonsense to get like its value going. I feel like you pay like 6 mana on your turn to draw 3 cards, and then it dies. It's awful. I'd rather just play a different team or commander that asks less of me. Am I crazy?
At least you have, like, if you
as
wait
a
until you
mid-range
can
card, it
activate
sucks.
at least you get value out of it, right? Like, as long as you
paid
leave up the
6
mana.
to draw 3.
Not really.
Like,
Hey, I have paid way more mana to draw way less cards, Tomer.
pay 6
It's
mana,
much
add 3
better
mana.
than that, Tomer.
Why does it have like
Come
ward? It needs like ward, at least like ward 2. Like, give me something over here.
I will say it worries me that Tomer's like the biggest Loot fanboy, and he's not very high on this card. That is concerning to me, because you know that if it was good at all, Tomer would be all about it. So that does scare me a little bit. It makes me think
It's a
maybe I'm
build
wrong.
around. If you have
It's a build
a
around,
random
not so
teamer deck
much.
and you throw in Loot, terrible card, right? But if you're playing a blink deck and you throw Loot in, like, you kind of just won the game, right? Like, because it has haste, you can blink
Yeah.
and use the thing immediately, and then keep blinking and like add mana, blink some more. You could probably go infinite in some way with this.
Deadeye Navigator.
So yeah, so I see where Tomer's coming from.
mana.
As a generic mid-range threat, kind of sucks, or it's like
Does
okay. I don't know. It's nothing incredibly crazy, right? Like 6 mana, 2/4 vigilance, haste, like draw 3. Like, it's like right? But if you build around it, or you just have incidental synergies, i.e. blinking. I think it's insane. Like if it didn't have exhaust on it, we would all agree it's insane, right? So now what you need to do is add stuff to your deck such that it doesn't actually have exhaust, which is blinking, copying, cloning, whatever, right?
Even if you use it fairly, is it that bad? Like, so you play a 5-drop, pay 1 mana, draw 3. Then the next turn you pay whatever, 1 mana, make extra mana, and then the next turn you lightning bolt. Like, if you get through those modes, and if your opponent kills it, then you play it and draw 3 again. Like, even played fairly, isn't it pretty good?
So you're gonna pay 8 mana to draw 3 now. No,
Yeah.
Hey, but
that's
plus I
great
get
on
a
card draw.
Pikachu.
Isn't like
Yeah.
I just feel like it's more the teamer's busted than loot is busted. Like I feel like
Yeah,
like
okay,
if I was
that's
playing a
fair.
Mirim, Animar, Xyrus, Magus Lucia, Storm, Maelstrom Wanderer, like all of these I feel are like you just go teamer, you pick any of these, you do a roulette or whatever, and you choose it and you're gonna do busted
Like
things.
the,
I feel
the
like
real
this one
trick
has-
is not play
most
loot.
of
You
you.
chuck it in your graveyard and you soul cauldron it, and then like you draw 8,000
Yeah.
cards and win the game.
True.
Right?
That's
Like
true.
I think that's the real use of loot. But then you're basically
that's
an
a
artifact
standard
deck or
game
something.
plan.
I hope it's I hope there's better things than Deadeye Navigator, because that's like 2011 Commander. Like
Is
that's
that no longer in vogue? Is that boomer
I
tech?
don't remember the last time I've seen a Deadeye Navigator. I do remember it when I started playing in 2012 or whatever, but
You-
I haven't seen it in forever.
You'd play it in loot, though, wouldn't you? It's
Yeah,
so
but-
good with
right?
the
You just
repeatable
win on the
blink,
spot.
yeah.
But
Right?
it's like
Because
you
you
spent
add
it.
infinite mana and then you just infinite bolt someone, right?
It's a 6 mana card.
I don't know if the mana quite lines up. You might need a third piece to go fully
Oh, you need a
infinite,
third
but
piece?
it's
Oh,
To
because
do
you
to
can't.
do in,
because of the
Because you only
colors
add one
impact
mana of
are
any color.
awkward, Yeah,
you need
the
you
colors
need
are
impact
weird.
tremors. You need impact tremors, and then you.
Oh, that's
and then
not a
You
very
can blink infinite times.
That's not a very good
Yeah.
combo anymore.
No,
Okay.
if that's the best, I hope there's better out there. But if that's the best, then I'm not convinced. We'll see. I'll
All
play
right.
it.
Well, we'll keep it on Tomer's shelf for now until proven otherwise.
I'll try it out.
Seth, hit us with
Ah.
the card.
All right, so we have a card that I think people have kind of forgotten about because they do those weird early spoilers like 2 months before the set. And this was one of those cards because I haven't heard people talking about it. I think this card is the best Gearhulk and one of the best cards for Commander in the set, Brightglass Gearhulk. So double green, double white for a 4/4 artifact creature. First strike and trample when it enters. You search your library for up to 2 artifact, creature, and or enchantment cards with mana value 1 or less. Put them in your hand and then shuffle. So if that sounds kind of familiar, this is like a Selesnya version of Ranger Captain of Eos, or Ranger of Eos rather, that's super upgraded. Ranger of Eos just gets 2 1 or 0 drop creatures. Adding in artifacts and enchantments makes this card way better. If you think about what this card can do, it does everything that Ranger of Eos would have done. Getting your Mother of Runes or whatever, getting your Mana Dork, getting your Essence Warden or your Soul Warden, getting whatever 1 drops. But then this is also getting your Skull Clamp or your Shadow Sphere. This can get an artifact land or an enchantment land. If you're missing your land drops, it can work like Yasharn to grab 2 of those if you want to make sure you're hitting your land drops. And then once you get into specific archetypes, this can be getting your Sigarda's Aid if you care about equipment. This can be grabbing removal like Chained to the Rocks. Like there's a bunch of different things. There's just so much flexibility in this card. So the only thing I kind of dislike is it's in 2 colors, which is going to narrow the kind of decks that can play it. But I feel like a lot of decks that are in Selesnya would just play this for value. Like your deck's going to have some good things to get out of this. It's going to make it worth its mana cost.
I am so right there with you. This whole like spoiler season, I don't see enough people talking about this card. I think this
people
is
forgot.
probably the best Gearhulk and probably one of the big upgrades. I think like for Selesnya, I almost feel like this is moving forward going to be a top 10 Selesnya card. Just because of how good that is, being able to grab your soul ring or, as you had mentioned, whatever, right? Like, there's so many things you can grab between enchantments, artifacts, and creatures. And 1 or less is not a real restriction because there's a lot of things. I'm
Yup.
playing this in my Black Panther deck just to go and grab, like, whatever, the Dryad, the little tree creature thing, right? And or a soul ring or whatever I need. It's so flexible. It can get Urza Saga. It can get whatever you need it to get.
It's so good. Like
It's
if
so
you're in Life Gain, you get 2 Soul Sisters or like the Sarah Avatar. What's the one that'll become like a
Sarah
food?
Ascendant.
Yeah.
Sarah Ascendant. If you're like in tokens, you get like your Ocelot Pride or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very good. It's a very good card.
You guys play Ranger of Eos? Like only I
Yes,
play that.
so
and
much
it's so
better.
It's double green, double white. So I can't actually cast this. This is like actually
What?
like
I mean,
physically impossible for me to cast. I need to warp my entire mana base to get this casted. So that's a real cost though, right? Like
Too many
even
colors.
if you're not playing on the Riverchurn mana base, you have to play the Crim mana base of playing like all the dual. You draw 3 basics. This thing isn't. 3 basics of the wrong type. It's hard to cast. But I think you guys are over, like you're listing like Chain to the Rocks. Like, please, when's the last time you played Chain to the Rocks, right? Like, realistically, what is this getting? Esper Sentinel Skull Clamp? Esper Sentinel Soul Ring?
any of
I
the
mean,
artifact lands, any of the like Valgavott's Lair.
Are you playing
Urza
like
Saga.
artifact lands normally? Like, I don't know.
You can,
But I think that's the
thing.
power of it, right? Is it's like it's so flexible. Like, sure, the default's going to be Esper Sentinel and Mother of Runes, Esper Sentinel and a Soul Warden or whatever. Like, you're going to have the package that's just like,
You don't
oh,
even
that's
play
my
that
default
normally.
package.
You don't put Soul
like-
Sisters in every deck.
If
Yup,
you're in a
but you can
counter
play
deck, wouldn't you want to get like Hardened Scales and the Ozolith? You know, like
Yeah.
that's some pretty
Right.
you know,
So-
like,
Hard scales.
you want to
Ozolith.
have stuff that you want to be getting,
Yes,
right? You don't
yes.
not just like firing
So
up. Like
if
I'm
you
life
build a
game,
deck and at
Yeah.
the end of the deck, you're like, look, there are critical 1-drop enchantments, artifacts, or creatures to my game plan, then you shove this thing in. But it sounds like you guys are starting with this and then like adding Chain to the Rocks to like make this random package, right? Like I feel it's like the Urza Saga problem. Like certain decks love Urza Saga, but most people kind of abuse it and throw in the free package of like random crap they don't need or want. And
Yeah.
this has a real cost. I want to see Seth cast this.
Is there?
I wanna
is this
see
a
Seth
real
cast
cost,
this.
though?
I think
This is not a real cost.
You
I
gotta
don't
remember
think you
too,
have to build
we're
around it.
green. We're freaking green. Like, how bad
Actually,
can our
he's
colors
right.
be when we're playing all the green
You're
ramp?
right.
Like, I am not.
You're right. We are
intimidated by
green.
it,
We
but
actually
yeah.
have perfect mana in green. You're
It-
right.
It's where I agree with Richard that I don't just like throw this in and then jam cards to justify throwing it in. I go the other way around, but also I don't think it's very hard to cast.
Like, let's be.
It's
real
also an
here.
artifact, so it can be recurred. It can be
Or
recurred
blink,
like, quite
you can
easily
blink it,
for like
whatever.
infinite value, right?
Yes.
You can blink if you blink this thing. It's crazy as well. So there's a lot of upside, and this applies to all the Gearhulks, right? They all can be blinked,
Well,
stolen.
They can all
I mean,
be blinked.
yeah.
Not as. This one's probably
But-
better to blink than some of them, but yeah.
yeah, like I don't think you need to really do much. This Gearhulk is just gonna fit right in there. It's not like you have to go. Okay, Chain to the Rocks, ambitious, yes, but like I do think that I'm not going out of my way to like really make this card work. It's just naturally going to happen.
I agree. I think it's a good card, but I don't think it's S. I don't think you're jamming it
Dude,
everywhere.
this is
and, like,
wild. You're trolling, right? How?
you're jamming
got
this
it.
in every
I
Celestia deck
mean,
starts with
yeah.
the Brightglass Gearhulk.
Dude, I think
No.
I'd
that's
probably not
so
playing
good.
it in 5 color, but I do think
No,
most
like
Celestia
2
decks
colors.
I
Let's
would
say you're
play
just
it.
strict Selesnya. Is this starting in your deck?
I feel like most of my decks would naturally have enough 1-mana things I want to find that I could play it without warping it. I wasn't trying to say you play all these bad cards to make it work,
Yeah.
but the upside is it gets your good cards, but then you can also find like Concordant Crossroads when you need haste to win the game, or if you're in a pinch, you can find the one removal spell that happens to work with it. So I was trying to make the argument for flexibility, not for playing like a bunch of jank in your deck. Plus, it gets all your explorations and all those enchantments that Tomer's always ramping a million land with. Like, there's like so many things this gets.
if I have good stuff, then I run it. Absolutely.
I got to see this in practice. If it really is for double tutor, like if it's like truly Enlightened Tutor, right? Enlightened Tutor is just tutor one of these. Actually, Enlightened plus Worldly Tutor. If your deck naturally wants these ones, then we're balling, right? Because double tutor on a 4-drop in colors that can blink it, and then as Seth pointed out, in
Okay.
green that can fix your mana perfectly, then we're good. Then we're good.
But Richard, it's not just those cards because it puts it into your hand. Those
do you
tutors
mean?
put it on top of your deck.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, because it actually draws, right? The tutors
Yeah,
are
it
like
actually-
a cycle. Yeah,
Yeah, and on top of that, let's not forget that that's a first strike trampling.
yeah. It's a
body,
legit
by
body too, by the
the way.
way.
Like
First strike
it
trample.
is a real body.
It is a real body.
All right, Tomer, what do you got for
All
us?
right. So I would say there's an archetype that needs some love and attention. And I think it's finally getting the love and attention it deserves. We got Radiant Lotus for it, but we got another banger for the artifact archetype. And that is Stridehangar Automaton. Now hear me out. 3 mana colorless, artifact creature construct, 1/4. Top creatures you control get +1/+1. if one or more artifact tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus an additional 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying are created instead. Now, hear me out. I'm playing, let's say, an artifact token deck, be it Lotus. I'm investigating a lot, I'm making a lot of clues. Playing Sam, I'm making a lot of food. Doing all these little things. Why not also make a lot of Thopters? And then also the Thopters, instead of being 1/1 flyers, they're also 2/2s. So not only are they good blockers, nobody wants to attack with a bunch of 2/2s, but also they can swing in and start killing people. 3 mana, colorless artifacts. It's pretty good. And you know what? Artifacts, they deserve it. So I'm putting this in my Tetsun deck. I'm putting this in my Teysa deck that is the Clue deck. If Prosper players, you like treasures? Well, why not treasures with Thopters? Yeah.
We need a Phil soundboard. There we go. Marius Kroger. Marius Kroger. Talent. Lotus. Are we at the point where there's like Panopticons? There's too many of these. Like, how many Academy manufacturer type cards can you put? Like, you got to start cutting some of them, right?
There's a blue one that made map tokens, but
make a token. Instead of make a token, make a million tokens. And you cast one artifact and like have like a full board, like Arena's maxed out.
Academy manufacturer is why I'm hyped for this card, because I think it works so well with that, because it's really easy to pop off with that card, but it doesn't make creatures, right? You're just making all these useless trinkets that you got to get value out of. If you throw this into the mix as you're popping off with Academy manufacturer, now you're also getting creatures that can actually kill your opponent, or you can skull clamp them or block with them. So I feel like I kind of view it as a combo piece. I don't know if I just jam it in like a random artifact deck, but if I have like Academy manufacturer and like those Lannis shenanigans going on, this card seems absurd to me.
Would you not just jam it as a value piece? Like, I don't see it as combo. I just see it as like insane value.
Do you see how many clues Phil has? Imagine there's
I guess
two
if I'm
flyers.
playing, like,
you're dead.
If I'm a dedicated like clue deck or treasure deck, then I guess I would play it.
But I would also
every
artifact.
And then you get aggro because it's super strong. But then it's like, well, try attacking me, bro. I have an army of 2/2 flyers.
Yeah.
I think the card is nuts. Genuinely, like, oh my god, artifact decks naturally make tokens. So yeah, I think there's no way. And now it gums up the board, so like you protect your face as well. So this card is sick.
Every time you see an artifact deck, you must kill them. Krim was the prophet. Krim all along. You get one combat in before there's like 50 Thopters over there blocking.
So good.
All right, Krim, what do you have for us?
Well, since Seth brought up the best Gearhulk, I had to bring up the second best Gearhulk. Gearhulks were designed in an era where they weren't as like commander like focused, right? But now with the focus on commander, I think Riptide Gearhulk is designed to be a multiplayer all-star as well. It's 5 mana, it's 1 white, blue. Richard's are already upset because of the color pips. But
it's basically a 7-drop in my eyes.
It's got double strike. It's got prowess. It's a 2/5. And when this enters, for each opponent, put up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls into its owner's library, third from the top. So you get Teferi, Hero of Dominaria's -2 or 3 or whatever, but you get to do to each opponent. And I think that is awesome. Attached to a double strike prowess body in already the primo all-star blink. Like you talk about blink in Selesnya, that's a little more offshoot. Azorius is the go-to blink color. This is going to be a pain. You are going to realize it's not only just getting rid of something on the board, it's ruining your draws, potentially. Because it is putting stuff up there that is like, okay, it's third from the top, so oh god, that means I'm probably going to draw into this. If they start blinking it, they essentially stack my draw step. Like that's going to be absolutely disgusting. Oh, and by the way, it has double strike and prowess.
It's any non-land. Like, that's the ridiculous. It's not just like, if it was creatures, I'd be like, okay, but it's like situational sometimes. If it just hit creatures. This is any non-land, so it deals with artifacts, enchantments, what have you. It's this is your top end for like a blink deck. Like if you're Abdel Adrian or Braga or whatever, it's gonna make
Yeah.
your opponents miserable. But then they can't kill you because all their permanents are gone, right? Like like you're gonna be that arch enemy, but then they don't have anything to swing at you with, and then you just win, and you hit them with double strike prowess, and they die.
The tuck style removal sounds bad at first glance. You're like, oh, I'm just gonna draw it again anyway. But when you actually think through it, like you're making your opponent skip their draw step, they have to spend their mana to recast the card, and it's super demoralizing. I learned that playing against a fairy, like having to cast the same thing again and again. Like you get some demoralization points there too. So I think it's like in a blink deck, this card's insane. What about outside of that, though? Like, can you play this in, like, Spellslinger? Are there artifact decks that want it? Or is this purely just, like, a busted blink deck card?
I mean, a lot of things will be busted in blink, but I think this is also just a nuts card in a blue-white mid-range deck. Whatever blue-white deck that has artifacts or creatures in it, which I assume you like is actually more than you would think. That this card's just gonna go in there. I think this Gearhulk's another generic good card. It as Tomer mentioned, it answers any non-land permanent.
What about you, Richard? You love your targeted removal. Does hitting everyone make it worth it? It's not even targeted, right? Because you hit 3 people. It's better than that.
It's kind of like
still
a
not.
I was thinking
you
in a
call
blink
it.
deck. So I highly undervalue things that hit something from each opponent, right? Because usually I just want to hit one thing and then the other 2 are coming along for free value, essentially. So I don't really like that. But I'm thinking about my Abdel Adrian deck. Do I want this as a blink target? It's so expensive. Like usually in the blink deck, you play like tons of cheap stuff and then you just start blinking them. And at that point, you're like invincible. Like, did you need this thing clogging up your hand and like you can't cast it in a blink spell at the same time? And you're probably already winning. Did you need to tuck things? So I don't know if I actually want it. And then in a generic deck, I don't like it at all. I don't value this kind of removal. Like there's a bunch of this removal, right? Like Comeuppance, Grasp of Fate or something where it's just like 3 mana, like chuck something from each player. I would actually play swords before I play one of those effects because you can actually cast the swords and it effectively does the same thing. Removes the one thing you wanted removed.
Moves a creature. Yes.
Yeah, but you know. But
yes.
Double strike
That's relevant,
prowess.
Richard.
If you're a big blink deck, I think you could make use of it. I'm trying to think if I really want it in Abdel Adrian or not. And I'm not decided. So maybe I'll just put it in to try. It's
What has the
expensive.
flexibility? Like, is there like a I'm thinking, is there like Aether Channel or something? Can it bounce any permanent, any non-land permanent?
No.
Is there any
it bounces
equivalent?
a creature.
Yeah, so I'm thinking like I don't know if there is something cheaper that does that can deal with that has the flexibility of Riptide Gearhulk, even
So
for
if
one.
you have
target.
like a Thassa or something like an actual blink, a permanent that blinks every turn, then you can Riptide Gearhulk blink and then get like massive value. But if you're holding like one of the 3 mana blink spells, you're gonna go shields down to cast this. It doesn't have flash, by the way, so you can't end of turn it, right? So you're gonna need 8 mana to play this. Have your blink like safety in case someone tries to wrath you or whatever. It's very expensive. So you really need like the Thassa or the portal, whatever, like one of those permanents that just blinks on end step, and then you're
like
cooking.
Soul Herder that does it.
There's like
a
Soul
free
Herder.
draw.
Like there's a bunch of things. So it depends on what blink deck. So I don't know. I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes, but it has potential to be crazy. Like if you blink this twice in a turn, yeah, I think you won the game, right? Like you
Or you
one-sided
put Displacer
right?
Kitten with this. Displacer Kitten with this. You just like everybody's boards are gone.
Yeah.
like a better
Displacer Kitten
Psychonic
X though answers is always
It's
always
true.
good.
But this is like the most miserable way of removing. It's like, no, I didn't just bounce it. No. I'm making you skip the rest of the game is skipped as you redraw all the permanents you put onto the battlefield before.
Yeah, like stacking their draw step is very big here. I think
That's
that this is everything is a conjurer's closet in the current year. So I think this card is very good. If I go some blink like Thassa you had mentioned, play this on 5, it's over. Like I just do not see a world where you lose.
And then you can use the special limited tech. You tuck it, and then you mill them for permanent removal.
Yo,
No, I
Well,
want
my Crim's
that's
artifact
the-
only
that's
mills
the Crim
2. It
special
doesn't
there.
work.
You
It
can do
just
that
mills
one
them back into it.
No, I
You
want
gotta mill
monument.
3
Will I
at least,
bounce?
right? Or 4. Or you get them because they forget to crack their fetch line and they crack their fetch line and they get it. Yeah. So there's some funny moments. I have a questionable card, which I don't know is good or not. I want your opinion. It's called Spectacular Pileup. 3 white sorcery. All creatures and vehicles lose indestructible until end of turn, then destroy all creatures and vehicles. Cycling 2. So the reason we love Farewell is because when people throw out those like pesky, like indestructible spells, right? You still deal with it, right? Like a Toxic Deluge, you still deal with it. This deals with it, right? In response, if they give themselves indestructible, it still gets stripped out and then everything gets removed. And then you can cycle this. So you can run 9 Wraths, and then if you have too many, you can cycle it away. Is this playable? Like I'm all on the everything Wraths, so this has lower value to me. But is this like not just like a really solid Wrath that actually gets rid of indestructible things? Or do we have better cards for that?
I mean, you already have Sunfall. It comes down to, okay, you might hose the one person who's like, oh, vehicles player, got him. But like, I
You lose your
feel that
graveyard.
this removal or this sweeper is only held up by the fact that it has cycling.
Mhm.
That is the main draw to this, because for the most part, it doesn't stop the phasing out. And a lot of stuff already kind of deals with indestructible.
I feel like it's. Oh, go ahead, Tomer.
Well, I don't know if this would be a little bit troll, but I feel like my ideal board wipe, and I feel like we're getting a little bit closer to it, would be like 6 mana, split second, everything phases in, loses indestructible,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
gets exiled.
Yes.
And then it'd be just like,
I
no
don't know
more
about split
Teferi's stuff for
second.
you.
But I think
I
without
just
split
wanted-
second, it's very.
How much mana do I have to spend to
People
just
would
actually
hate
get
that
rid of the
card.
creature?
Do you need the split second though? Like, what are they gonna do? Sack their
Yes.
stuff in response? Like, whatever, right? Like, it's phasing back in.
Oh.
8 mana. I'll spend 8 mana for that effect. Just give me. I want to know that the creatures are dead. I
It
want to
is
make sure
creatures,
that they
though.
die.
You're not hitting all the other stuff. Just creature. Okay, for just creatures, I get behind that.
Just
Okay,
creatures.
okay.
Get them out of here.
I feel
No
like
more
this
Teferi,
card's
bro.
This card's pretty mid, I think. It's fine. It's not bad. The cycling is appealing, I guess. It is, I guess, scarily. It does let you play even more Wraths in your deck, which I don't know if that's something I'm happy about, but you can play more because on the justification, I always cycle it away. But as far as a Wrath, doesn't it rank behind a lot of them? Like, I feel like this is like the
Sunfall is
8th or
ahead of
9th or 10th best Wrath in white in Commander. Like, I think it's kind of far down the list. Like, the vehicle upside isn't much. And as Krim said, a lot of protections phase out. So yeah, you get the green player who tried to heroic intervention or whatever. But if you're up against a white deck, they probably just T-Pro'd or clever concealment anyway. So I don't know. I think it's like playable, but I don't think it's like a staple or anything.
Only the
Gotta
white
phase
player
it in.
has outs, but no one else. Actually, blue can phase
Blue-
out. Blue
or
can
just
But
phase
it's
out.
also
counter you.
like
Oh, yeah, blue
red,
can
red
counter
has
you.
limited ways of giving indestructible. It's usually like equipment, and also black kind of just want like their best way of getting around removal is like having stuff that bounces them back from the graveyard. Green has like heroic intervention and a bunch of those 1 mana spells that I use like
Yeah.
all of them in Voltron decks. They give it indestructible and hexproof, and this actually gets around them, which I'd be very
This
sad
does
about.
get green, yeah.
All right, we'll,
It
we'll
hits-
put this
it
in the
hits green
bulk
pretty
pile
well.
in the waiting room for the split
It's fine.
second phase in, remove everything, because I think it's actually coming, because the phasing out is a problem. So let's see if
Yeah.
Wizards actually addresses it. Seth, what do you have for us?
All right, I got a little uncommon here that I'm actually pretty excited for in Skyserpent Seeker. So this is a Simic 2-mana 1/1 snake with flying and death touch. And then it has exhaustive 4 to do like a weird mini open the way. Reveal cards from the top of your library and to hit 2 land cards. Put them on the battlefield tab. The rest go to the bottom in a random order. And it gets a +1/+1 counter. So when I see this card, I see like one of the ultimate Commander ramp spells, because when you're playing a ramp deck in Commander that just wants to like dirtle and draw cards, one of the things I've learned in the last couple of years is you really want a body on the battlefield in the early game. I've learned this from Richard and his Spirited Companions, that if you just try to do the ramping and card draw thing and you don't put a body down there, then you're just a blood bag for everyone trying to trigger their stuff in the early game and you get too far behind. When I read this card, I see the ultimate turn 2 defense. Like, who's going to swing into you when you have this death toucher? It doesn't even matter how good their creature is. Like, it's going to take it down. And it has flying, so it even enchantment blocks like big dragons and stuff, but it's a great roadblock that's going to make someone else take those early hits. And then when you get to 4, you can do the like mini open the way and get 2 lands on the battlefield, which I think is the best kind of ramp, right? Like it's putting non-basics. I don't got to flood my deck with a bunch of islands or forests to make this work. So I think this card's going to be part of my ramp packages in Simic decks. I think I just kind of always will play it as one of my ramp spells, but I'm curious what you guys think.
You know Tower Winder from Outlaws?
Oh, I forgot about that card.
Wait,
People
what
were
is
hyped
that?
about that for a
Tower
minute.
Winder.
This Tower Winder is a 2-mana 1/1 snake in green from Outlaws. It's reach Death Touch, and when it enters, you can only go and look through your deck or
Oh,
Breaker
yeah.
for a command tower. That card was good, except
But it goes in your
like
hand.
you know, it's like yeah,
Yeah, it
except
doesn't
for
ramp.
any time where command tower is in your hand or on the board or
Yeah.
whatever, right?
Well, that feels awful.
This is a beefed up version of that, I think personally, because A, it can be stronger, but it gets 2 lands from the top of your deck. I think Skyserpent Seeker is once again in Simic. Naturally, they would have the absolute nuts ramp package card. The card is insane. My eye twitches when I see this card. It does everything I hate about Simic, and naturally it's green and a blue. As always, growth spiral, yada, yada, yada. Like, this card is nuts, and it's an insane blocker as well. A lot of people, we don't swing into Solemn. We already don't swing into Richard's Spirited Companions. We're not trading with a snake either. So this is just going to be a solid defense on top of ramping you.
I think it's good. I'm just like, there's going to be some feel bads when it just gets randomly sniped or something before you use its exhaust ability. Like, which is a problem. Like, I compare it to like Baleful Strix. Baleful Strix is like flying Death Touch, but it ETBs and draws a card. So even if it dies, you're like, whatever, I already got some value out of it. This one, you could play it, and then there's the scary moment where you have to wait until you have 4 mana before you activate it. But
True.
I still think it's good in certain decks. I feel like you really. I do
Don't say
think
certain decks, Silver. Just say it's bad. I know you want
Who's
to.
gonna
Narrow.
wait. No, but Tomer, okay, listen, before Richard poo-poos this card for some reason, let me ask you though, Tomer, who's gonna snipe this with removal? Like, if I play this on turn 2 and you want to tap and go generous gift it or swords it or something,
no.
I feel like I'm winning still. Like, if
I
you
feel
spend
like-
an actual removal spell on this, I'm still coming out ahead, right?
it's more like
Because
the
it blocked. You're
incidental. Like
it's a
if there's
blocker.
anything
It
that
doesn't block.
yeah, you're not gonna block with this until you use its exhaust ability. So it doesn't actually do the thing you want it to
Yeah.
do early on, I don't think. And then also,
But I don't think you need to block, because who's going to test you? Like, if you got
I'm
the
gonna
death touch,
test
are you
you.
going to?
I know you're not
100% know you're not gonna block,
Oh,
Seth.
I bet you're not going to block with your 1/1. I don't think.
But
you
also,
will.
there might be just like, I don't know. I can't think off the top of my head, but there could be commanders that just have incidental ping abilities. And if that
Okay,
happens, then it
that's
just
fair.
feels
A
bad.
Bowmaster
Like, it
just
just,
comes down. That's
yeah,
if you get
that will
Bowmastered or
happen,
something,
right?
yeah.
Somebody
That's a
Bowmasters
small
you or
percentage.
something. It feels
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, that's true.
But like, I do think it's just is kind of decent to jam. And then if there's any decks that like care about dealing combat damage to your opponents, like this is like a 2-drop flyer that also
It
ramps
flips that
you.
Dowsing
So it's
Dagger.
like,
Yeah, the
flips
best
the
part is
Dowsing
it
Dagger.
flips Dowsing Dagger. Otherwise, you guys are smoking. Okay, Seth. 6 mana, 2/2 flying Death Touch. When it ETBs, ramp 2 lands from the top. Is that playable?
That's horrible. But
That's horrible. Okay, but you're splitting the mana, right, Seth?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Because we all know you want to waste turn 2 playing a 1/1. In green, the curve is rampant growth, Farseek, Nature's Lore, 3 visits, etc., whatever, to go to 4 mana to hit an explosive vegetation. You know what I mean? So there is no point in the curve that you actually want this thing, right? So it looks good. I guess the theoretical is you go cultivate.
All right,
Okay, so you turn 2 Skyserpent Seeker. Turn 3, you play the cultivate effects, which we don't play because now your curve is all messed up. And then you untap and you do this. Still seems terrible. Like I'm not cutting Rampant Growth Sport. Are you cutting Omen Path Journey, Open the Way? Are you cutting those? No, right? So
no, but
does it have a whole
that
like?
is-
I'm like, what if
that
you
is a
need
good point
creatures?
about
What
how
if you
long-
have the Great Henge or something? I still wouldn't play this, right? Like triggers Guardian Project, maybe Beast Whisperer. Still like 6 mana 2/2. You don't play that. That's not playable.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that is a good point. In my head, I see this as I play it on turn 2, and no one's going to mess with me for a few turns because they're going to be too afraid of attacking into the Death Touch. And then turn 4, I get double ramp, which is already like kind of fine. But yeah, that is, if you draw it later, it's kind of much jankier because then you are spending 6 mana just on the ramp and not getting the value out of it. Maybe it's not as much. I don't know. It's still got to be good, right? I'm
gonna be honest with you. Drawing it later is the same as drawing, like, I don't know, the any other little ramp piece later. This one,
Well, no, Open the Way gets you 4 lands still. This only gets you 2, right?
Sure,
That's
but it gets
different.
some amount of lands, right? I don't know.
It's not bad.
I think this
And
card
then
is
just a
super
walker.
solid.
Yeah.
I do think Richard's point about how it throws off the ramp curve is a fair one. Like that's the one thing that actually has me rethinking it a little bit is like, it is true that I really want to ramp 2 into 4 and this does kind of throw it off. Am I going to start playing Cultivates to go 2-3 for some reason? So maybe the math doesn't work out on that end, but discounting that, I still think it's a good ramp spell.
Discounting your
Those are
entire
almost-
mana curve.
Discounting your very good argument.
But like, there's only so many 2 mana land ramp cards out there that you want to be running, right? Like, you'll have like
Yeah, it's
5
like
or
5.
so. So
There's a
it's
lot.
Like,
Yeah.
Have you seen
how
the
many do
build
you
that?
run?
if you want to know how many 2 mana ramp spells that ramp the land,
Exists.
look at a field and your Simic. So you get to play Growth Spiral, you get to play the other Growth
Oh,
Spiral
right.
as well. Like you
Yeah,
get,
explore.
and then like the 8 million rampant growths, explores, etc., etc. This sacks the
Maybe-
player of cultivation.
Maybe
That's
it's just
not
bad
nothing.
Coiling Oracle. Maybe I'd rather just play Coiling Oracle. And then I still get the body, but then it's not going to throw the curve off and it
You're
replaces
I
not
would
going to
not
block
play
with it,
Coiling
though,
Oracle.
Seth.
I would not. This is
Everyone
better than
knows
Coiling
no one is
Oracle.
blocking with this until you exhaust it. So they're just going to hit you because they know you're about to exhaust it.
Why? Are you really
All
going
right,
to take the
Tober.
risk?
Hit us
Okay,
up
well-
with the card.
So I got a card that I know is good. I just don't know where it's good. So help me out here. It's a blue enchantment that says it's an unstoppable plan. It's a 3 mana blue enchantment that says at the beginning of your end step, untap all non-land permanents you control. So there's like a green version of this that's 4 mana. It's a 4 mana green enchantment that at the beginning of your end step, you untap all land permanents you control. This one is the flip side. It costs 1 less. And it's only your non-lands. So your lands stay tapped, your non-lands all untapped. So at the very least, like if you're attacking with your creature or something, this is like pseudo vigilance. It untaps all your things. I feel like this card can be really good in like draw go decks. Like if you have dorks and mana rocks or whatever on the battlefield, you can tap them for value. You can swing out with your team, and then you get to immediately untap everything. And hold up all that resources for your opponent's turn. And it's only 3 mana, so it's super mana efficient. But like, I just don't know what deck I would put it in. So, does anybody? It's gotta be decent, right?
I'm actually not sure. Like, so the concern I have with this is it really does want you to have a bunch of mana rocks and mana dorks, and those are just things I really don't want to put in my decks. We did a whole podcast about that last week, actually. So I think you need a bunch of those things because I don't just think giving your team like pseudo vigilance in most decks is going to be like enough. Like, oh, I can block you or whatever. Like, I don't think that's going to be good enough. So I think if you got a bunch of mana rocks and mana dorks, yeah, it's probably good for value. I just don't know if I want to build my deck that way. The other way to play it is like Wilderness Wreck, like how you played that, where like on your end step you float all your mana and then try to like tap your stuff again to cast some big instant and like Nexus of Fate and take an extra turn and do it. Like, so you could probably do something like you did with Wilderness Wreck, like reverse Wilderness Wreck. But I actually think this is like a powerful card that I will never play in any deck.
I if anybody can help me out, Crim would help me out. I feel like this is a Crim card, and I'm like, this would be good.
It's a
for
combo
Draco,
card. Doesn't play
probably.
combo. What are you talking about?
It's like combo. It only attacks 1 time.
At the beginning of your end step, untap all non-land permanents you control. Hold on, what do you mean 1 time? Like that 1 time is everything you need, right?
Yeah,
What
but
are you
it's
gonna
not
go?
combo.
You
go
down.
right in.
What are we
You go right
untapping?
into the artifacts. Right into the artifact deck, right? Like this is more
He's right.
redundancy in artifact decks that don't need it, but they will gladly take this, right?
Did I just
can
pick
improvise.
artifact
You can
cards?
improvise.
Yes.
Oh,
And
So you
then
can
on top-
improvise, you can convoke, you can use.
Yep.
So remember you played the Heliod deck Tomer, where I don't know what it did, but it was like tap win the game. It was like add infinite mana or something, right? So you can do it on your turn and then play this, untap, do it again. We have
that
similar
would be
cards.
actually so
Seedborn
strong.
Muse,
Isn't Unwinding Clock just
Unwinding
better
Clock
than
for artifacts that does it every upkeep. Wilderness Wreck for lands. I don't know. It's like a very specific combo deck, I think. I don't think you do this for value. Or it's like the value of Heliod, whereas like you're really just gonna win if it happens, right?
Nah.
I mean,
fairies. Would fairies like it? I don't know.
Fairies would
It
probably
doesn't give you mana though. You're pinched on mana usually, right? Like that's what you really
fairies
want.
does not want it because it's not exactly a tempo play in that I do not get any mana back, right? I am now tapped down to play this sorcery speed enchantment. I think this is going to potentially go into something with Riverchurn Monument, of course. And then I think there's a lot of blue decks that could use this, but it's going to be whatever is using Intruder Alarm, right? Like maybe Intruder Alarm combos, stuff like that to just... It may not win on the spot, but it's just another untap, which is nice. But right now, the main thing I can see is just artifacts. Because all your mana rocks, everything untaps. It's just another form of it. And I think the card is good. It's very good. It's just, I think, more of redundancy than anything new.
I'm gonna play with it, and I'll see if I can figure out anything cool.
There's gotta be some combo you can do it. I think like there's probably specific combos you can do, just like there's specific unwinding clock combos. There's got to be something. Isochron Scepter. Right?
Yeah,
you get to
how do you
untap
play
Isochron
Isochron
Scepter, but then that means you had to tap your Isochron Scepter during your turn, which usually that's not what's happening. But there's got to be, right? There's got to be something that it combos with.
Stasis, guys. It's okay. You got him.
We got him.
Whoa.
You play a bunch of mana
broke it.
rocks,
Stasis
and then
and
you play
skydiving.
Stasis.
We
We
got it.
Oh, what's a like moment? What's a savor the moment?
Yeah.
You play Savor the
No,
Moment.
untap
you
your
untap-
lands though. You need the lands to untap.
But if you're a mana rock believer, as you should be, then bam.
I mean,
someone else.
There's something with blasting stations, right? The classic like Pemin's Auras and Thornbite Staff, right?
But
like
it's only
those
like
kinda
one
things.
more though, right? Like
Yeah.
one more. Like usually you want to kind of go infinite with those kind of combos. So
Yeah.
what's like
Fair.
a one more combo that's enough to get you there?
Yeah.
Try it.
We'll try it. Oh, what about like
Hmm.
inspired mechanic? Remember that mechanic for when
Oh,
you
yeah.
untap?
It does untap all your stuff.
Random stuff happens.
I don't know if I can name an inspired card at this point. They were all so bad.
They're probably also
They
bad.
should bring
All
that
right.
back, though.
We'll brew on that. We'll get back to you guys. We'll figure it out. Surely we can figure it out between the four of us to make an unstoppable plan deck. All right, Krim, hit us with the last card.
It's a god, and it's Ketramose the New Dawn. 1 white and black. Menace lifelink indestructible 4/4. Ketramose can't attack or block unless there are 7 or more cards in exile. That's everybody, like all together. And then whenever 1 or more cards are put into exile from graveyards and or the battlefield during your turn, you draw a card and lose a life. I think this card is nuts. If this is your commander, you are able to get some serious value. You can sit there and play like, I don't know, a Relic of Progenitus deck, right? And then just be the most hilariously annoying person of all time. You passively are just graveyard hate. However you build this, you're kind of graveyard hate. And with that in mind, you can easily just annoy all this like graveyard synergy decks, which is many because almost every color has it. So I think this is your commander. You're going to passively just be able to shut down a lot of stuff. Just what you'd put in here, like if you put Rest in Peace in your deck, like you put these cards that you're like lightly hate bears. I'm not going to call it stack. Seth might call it stack, but I'm going to say you're closer to hate bears than you are stacks. You would play Rip, things like that every turn. Then you just blow stuff up and it's like, cool. It combos with Farewell, everybody. We can exile
Farewell.
combos with Farewell. Unless you exile, the god. But I think this card just has a lot of play just because so many things exile nowadays.
I love this card. I think this card's so like, okay. And also, hear me out. But I think this is actually a good mill commander. Why? Because you mentioned Relic Progenitus, but there's a lot of these like cards that are like very repeatable sources of exiling from the graveyard, like Withered Witch, for example. 2 mana creature, pay 1 mana, instant speed, exile target card from a graveyard. So you put down like a mesmeric orb on the battlefield or something, so you always have stuff to exile from your opponents, and then you just keep like ping, 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 and then you draw like a billion cards. And then it's online, and it's like starts smacking people with a menace indestructible lifelink. Like, yeah.
Ghost vacuums. They're
Oh,
all
yes.
there. Yeah.
Ghost vacuum.
Yes.
You guys are going way more stacksy and janky than I was just like, oh, I cast a Swords to Plowshares and draw a card. I cast an
Yeah.
Anguish Unmaking. I Ephemerate, I draw a card. So, yeah, I think this card's absolutely busted because I think it can do all those things. You can build a Crim Stack deck, you can build a Tomer Mill deck, or you can just play like, if you think about some of the most played cards, Swords and Paths and Ephemerates, there's so many good cards that just happen to exile things. So I think this is going to be one of the most hyped commanders from the set for sure. And it seems super fun. I just draw so many cards.
I was worried if I said Swords, you all would immediately turn off it. So I tried to.
I mean, this is the deck to play Swords in. I'm all aboard the set's plan. I think if you're playing like Rest in Peace, I think you're probably like indexing too hard on this. But there's like plenty of effects that just straight up exile, like Swords, Path, like the creatures, like Skyclave, Apparition, stuff like that. This all draws cards. And then guess what? Then you blink them and you draw more cards, right? So I think this is probably better as a blink deck than any kind of Hate Bears type deck. And you can probably like a Relic is free. It cycles itself, right? So you can throw in a Relic of Progenitus or whatever. But just playing like solid exile base removal, I think will get you there. Blink. So you don't have to play so much spot removal because that's disgusting, right? So you just blink things for fun, right? Draw cards. You need life gain, though. You're probably going to die real fast, even though this thing has life link. It has life link, but you can draw a lot of cards.
You could be draw a lot of cards.
This is the Ivory Tower deck. This is the Ivory Tower deck right here. You're going to draw some cards.
It seems easy to solve 2 in black and white, right? You can play an actual Soul Warden if you want to, a Grey Merchant. So there's a lot of ways that you can gain the life back if you build around just a little bit.
And if you do, you get to play Batter Blossom, aka Lunar Convocation.
Oh,
you can
that's
start
spicy.
making bats. Like you slowly start draining people because you lose life and you gain life or whatever. If you gained life and lost life this turn, you create a 1/1 bat. You kind of just keep gumming up the board. I don't know. I think this commander's kind of cracked.
Oh, it is.
It's a little.
I totally agree.
A little
it's really good.
I think it's designed to sell boxes. I think that's what it's for.
I want to build a budget brew around it, but it's already $22. So hopefully that goes.
The rest of your deck can cost $5, Tomer.
I know.
And then
like
we got
Swords is cheap. Like most of the cards are cheap. Withered Wretch is cheap. Like it's.
The answer is Blink. You play.
Hey, Blink.
You play. What are those 1/3s? I forgot their names. The 1/3s that like exile the creature and then they come back when the creature is removed.
Flicker Wisp.
I like a Flicker Wisp.
Oh
wait.
Oh no, the actual permanent
Palace
removal.
Jailer and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh,
the ones we play in standard all the time. That like goes under the creature and
Banisher
like the
Priest.
Fiend Hunter.
Yeah.
Fiend
Banisher
Hunter, and then if
Priest,
you blink your creature at the right time, it's permanently removed. But like you just play all of those, you play a bunch of blink cards, and you have a killer $35 deck. I think.
Yeah.
I actually
Blink is
can't
cheap.
believe it doesn't say once a turn. This seems like the kind of card that most of the time it would be once per turn, but since it doesn't say that, wow, this card is so powerful.
So you're saying you can play this with like an Akaza deck, and that would just drain an opponent, right? Because that would be you lose a life, an opponent loses a life and gains a life whenever you draw a card. So you could keep doing that, and I think I figured it out, everyone. I think I broke it. Necropotence.
Oh yeah. Wait, that kind of works though, but don't you exile the cards on your end step and then you're gonna have to discard them to hand size? You might need a relic.
Yeah, whatever.
Power.
More cards
But
enter exile because when you discard, it goes to exile. Come on, is that not sick?
Yeah,
I don't even know.
No, you could draw
putting the
Necropotence attack, and then that's good.
Wait, no. When you discard to Necropotence, right?
It goes.
You
to
discard a
exile.
card.
Oh, it goes
Exile
into
that
exile. No. But goes.
But I'm not sure it
from
triggers
graveyards
it.
enter the battlefield.
Oh,
From your hand doesn't
yeah.
count. From your hand does not count.
But you do get to draw cards though, right? Because you are now
So pay
exiling
life,
the top.
exile the top card of your library.
You could play Necropotence activate it 7 times, and then you have 7 cards in exile, and you attack with Ketramose, and then you don't care about.
Yeah, are we really trying to
Oh,
break
yeah, I guess it does
Necropotence?
that.
Yeah,
We're trying to draw
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
cards
Necro.
with the conditions that we have Necro on the
I
battlefield.
think
Is
we
that what we're
broke
doing?
Necropotence. I think we broke Necropotence, you guys. And you gain
Maybe.
life off the
I'm not sold
Ketramose
yet.
when you attack. Wow.
I heard that card was 1 star, so I don't know.
All right, those are our choices for top cards from Aetherdrift. Let us know in the comments if we missed anything. Let us know what you think about the speed mechanic. What's your favorite Gearhulk? There's 5 Gearhulks, right? How many Gearhulks do we have?
Yeah, there's 5.
Did
And
we
there's
choose
5.
the right Gearhulks, or are there some sleeper Gearhulks in there? Let us know. And are you playing Skyserpent Seeker? I'm curious. I am curious if we're doing it or not. Let us know in the comments,
take.
and we'll see y'all back next week. Krim?
If you're out there, let me know in the comments. I think this set might secretly be one of the Commander All-Star sets of the year.
Well,
It's
we
one
gotta
of
have
the
a hot
sets of
takes
the year,
episode.
that's for
I actually
sure.
think it's Assassin's Creed.
I
from-
mean, it has the most
the
loot in
last
it.
chunk of time.
That's
It has the
last
most
year,
loot,
Richard.
therefore
That's
it's
last
not
year.
year.
I know, but we'll see. Maybe this will be set of the year. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out when we actually play with these cards.
Also,
So-
the Verges, they're going to go into like every deck. Those are going
Oh
to
yeah,
be the
we
most played
didn't talk
cards.
about the Verges, the
Verges.
dual lands.
You guys play those?
You're going to put them in all your
Yes.
decks. Yes.
You guys
They're
play
better
Verges?
than
Do you play Verges, Richard? I never
In
I've never
two-color
played a
decks.
Virgin Commander.
Yes.
I guess maybe in 2-color. I might.
3-color decks.
No.
Yeah, I played
Oh,
them.
That's just
oh, you
all
snarl lovers. Those are like almost
They're
only
so-
slightly
we're
better
not
than a
getting
No,
into
snarl.
they're way better than a snarl.
What?
man.
They're not getting
Yeah.
into that.
They turn
All
into
right,
my
we'll see
shop.
y'all back next week.